Hey Band Network Leadership Series.
Hello, welcome to the Hey Band Network. We are here in our leadership series. Another interview today with a band director up in the San Antonio, Texas area, Amanda Stevenson at Winston Churchill. So welcome to the Hey Band Network.
Yes, hello, thank you.
Welcome, welcome. We're going to talk about leadership, and you've got your circumstance is you're going to get into about your experience and your years at this school. And I know you've been a head director at other places. And so kind of talk about that being new at a school and how to implement. And then on top of that, we've got this school closure and implementing leadership auditions and all that good stuff. So we'll dive into some of that. So first of all, tell everyone about yourself, where you've been and where you're from.
Yep. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. But yeah, my name is Amanda Stevenson. As you said, I am at Winston Churchill High School in San Antonio, Texas. Prior to that, I was the director of bands at Taft High School, or William H. Taft High School here in town as well, for about 4 years. And prior to that, I was the assistant band director at Georgetown High School in Georgetown, Texas. I was there for, I want to say 9 years or so. So now I'm, like I said, at Churchill, this head director there. So pretty excited. It's been a fun ride so far.
Awesome. Tell us about the Churchill program in terms of ensembles and what your program offers.
Yeah, so at Churchill, we are a 6A campus. We have 3 different concert bands. We have our wind ensemble, which is our varsity group, our non-varsity symphonic band, and our concert band is our sub-non-varsity. We have staff for each group, and then we have our jazz ensemble. Currently, this year, we started that in the spring, every other day after school. I'm excited, and God willing, we get that into a class next year, so that's exciting. We have our color guard that is a part of the group. Obviously, they go into winter guard season in the spring. And then throughout the season, we have our percussion ensembles as well. And so they're cranking all year. So they had a performance this year at Midwest. So while we were doing our marching stuff, they were still playing. And so we're continuing that in the spring. In addition to that, just what our campus has, we have a musical that we put together for the fine arts group. We have where our students are playing in it. And then we have our full orchestra that we have. So that group was able to perform this year, and they got their ones. So they had their trophy, their sweepstakes trophy. So they did well. So usually our top band will coincide with that group. And so we'll have rehearsals every other day is what we're kind of doing, a rotation during the day, and we'd work with them during the class period. So that's kind of what we offer as a full program.
Yeah, and I got to hear your group at Team EA playing in a clinic this year. It was fantastic, and your winter guard has been outstanding this spring. So congrats, and
yeah,
percussion program too. So very cool. How many kids do you have in the program?
Right now, we're floating a little over 200. So me coming in as the new director, that's kind of where we've been holding steady. We're going to stay there again next year and just hoping to build up from there. So we have about, right now, 18 to 20 in our color guard. Our percussion section is pretty large. We have about 36, I want to say, in that group. So the rest is just your wind players. But it's been fun for sure. It's getting to know all those new names has been a treat.
That's awesome. And it's got a program's been great for years. So under your leadership's in great hands. So, all right. So as we all know, a successful program and leadership program is not just one person, it's an entire staff at a campus. Yeah. And so tell us about your staff at Winston Churchill High School.
Well, I am definitely blessed with a great staff and just very eager guys that just want to learn more and do more. You're right. It is not just one person. There's no way. So I have Joseph Espinosa is our associate director. Great clarinetist. We're kind of in a tricky spot because I'm also a woodwind player. I'm a saxophonist, but I marched euphonium and drum corps and baritone, and I feel like I've taught way more brass now than woodwinds. With still teaching drum corps stuff. So he does all of our woodwind things. I handle the brass, and we're both very comfortable that way. So he does fantastic with our symphonic band. It's our non-varsity group. He helps with our instrumental ensemble classes as well, which is kind of an added course. So we have usually band classes are in the morning. We have ours in the afternoon. It kind of lines up a little bit better with our middle schools that way. And so in the mornings, we have instrumental ensemble classes. So it's a woodwind class or a brass class. We have some kids that can't make either one, so they flip-flop a bit. But so he works with those students and really helps out with those kids just getting better and doing selected and more advanced studies in that class. During our marching part of the season, he's in charge of our all of our workouts and getting the kids physically ready for their performances and all of that. He's done a great job with our music theory course. So he's set that up and just some of those the standard tasks that come with the position of inventory and lockers or library stuff. So he's done a lot of those tasks and done great with that. Our other director is Colton Bean. He's our not only associate director, he's also our percussion instructor. So in the fall, he's heading up our front ensemble, our entire percussion section, our drum line as well. We talked about a little earlier, we were able to go to Midwest this year, and that was such a cool trip for the kids. They really enjoyed it. They did well. So while we were all eggs in the band basket, the marching band basket, they had to also, have their music ready to go for that December performance. So he was doing double duty and he didn't go crazy. So that's awesome. So he survived it, but is kind of in his wheelhouse, and he's been doing percussion ensembles all year. So we're ending the year with percussion ensembles as well. And then Kim Boer is our color guard instructor. Amazing. She's a fantastic person. But what's great about Kim is not only is she focused on color guard and the winter guard, but we think it's important to make sure that all the students know all of the staff. So in our marching season, she starts out the kids learning basic movement stuff. So what is a plie? What is a rond de jambe, dégagé, tendu? So she comes up with exercises for the full band to do. So the kids get to know her in that form and fashion, and as well as the color guard stuff. So they're all great people to work with, and they bring a lot to the table. So pretty blessed with having that group.
Awesome. Sounds like great people you have helping out. Well, we're here to talk about leadership, and this will be fun because you being a first-year director, implementing new plan, and then trying to do it in these interesting times. And so if we could just start on, tell us about your leadership plan, kind of what's your structure in terms of roles and positions that students have in the program.
Yeah, we have, essentially we have like many people do their I guess we call them a band. So you're going to have your band president, your vice president. We have, this year we had a secretary, and then we had a social media chair. And so what we're looking to do in the future is actually combining those to where we have the secretary who kind of took attendance during our rehearsals and did some of the communications with the ensembles. They would also take on that social media chair. And so they work with the staff to get things out on Facebook, get things out on Instagram, announcements, or kind of a liaison for events that we put on, or working with the middle schools, those types of things. So we have that. Those are elected positions, like the president, vice president are elected by the students. We are adding next year representatives, so like your class representatives, and they're essentially kind of our liaison between the band staff, how let's say the junior class, how they're doing. We want to focus on it more academically also, of what do we have a SAT, pre-SAT coming up, what's the tough class, what's our tutoring schedule like, do we have a band tutoring schedule that we can adhere to, so those types of things. So we're going to be implementing that next year. So those are kind of our council positions. We do have your standard drum major positions. We have them to where there's a head drum major and an assistant drum major, so we don't necessarily trade off on podiums or anything. And then we have We are adding a brass captain this coming year. We're adding a woodwind captain this coming year. And so just to kind of coincide with what has happened with our color guard captains, we have multiple there, and same thing with percussion. We'll have a front ensemble students. We have a couple in front ensemble. We have about 3 in our drum line, so for each instrument. And so we have those positions. Those captains are in the hierarchy above what would be our section leaders. And so we have kind of, depending on the numbers of how many students are going to be in the section, those are kind of flexible as well. But we do have our section leaders, and we go into librarians and your loading crew and uniform crew and those other positions as well.
So let's talk about how do you become I'm going to let you pick, you can pick band council and then the drum major, section leader type stuff. How do you get into those positions?
Yeah, our president, vice president right now, they kind of list out, these are the positions I'm applying for. And then once we get those listed out, the students vote on those. And they, again, just like circle the name kind of thing is what we would essentially be doing. Some of them are elected positions, and we do that through interviews. So there's kind of a process. So what's tricky is what, like we jump to the drum major position, like what has happened at Churchill, and then traditionally, and then what I normally would be doing in a program for quite a while, and then what's happening right now because of this whole coronavirus thing. So with the drum majors, we are currently in that audition process right now this week. We are doing a week-long training camp. So we essentially train those students. Normally, I think what has happened in the past for Churchill's that they've had their last drum major, so their senior drum major has been the person to train them on the conducting. I've actually been a judge for the Churchill drum major auditions before. And last year, what they're able to do was they learned from the senior drum major, and then they performed or conducted the Star Spangled Banner, a piece that they would play with a small ensemble. They would also go through their conducting process, or their conducting patterns, I should say. So they'd show those off, and then, you know, they kind of pull a number out of the hat, you know, if it's tempo 120, and, you know, they have to conduct it, and we kind of clock them, and that's how that's been. This year, so coming in as a new director is kind of tricky because I've had my own process in doing some things, and I'm all about, you know, if someone else has a better process, I'd love to learn from it and tweak it. So I've never actually kept it exactly the same way. If someone has a better idea, I usually try to steal that. But so essentially what they've done in the past, I've had students create like a notebook or a portfolio essentially. So in keeping in line with the idea of training the students to do life interviews, you know, like interview for your job, your career, those types of things. So they'd have to have a resume in there, a cover sheet, clear plastic sheets in there that separate everything out with dividers, like how detailed could we get it kind of thing. They'd have essay questions that they fill out. They also end up doing we do teacher recommendations. So we let the teachers know on campus ahead of time, you're about to get a slew of paperwork to do. And so, you know, the teacher fills it out kind of like 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, and questions on attendance, group learning, how are their grades, so we want to know, like, is Billy one way with us and then a different kid over there? Is it, you know, the same student? So we definitely pick the brains of the teachers, the administrators as well. And then that's a part of that process. And then we ask them to do a handbook. So a handbook is essentially for their section. So if they're applying for a section leader position or even the drum major position, essentially, like a lot of people would have like a fundamental handbook, like first step forward is this, and these are the count structures and all of that. They would in turn, so I give them that as an example, what I have for the program, and then they create theirs off of just based on their section. So they add pictures, how do I hold the instrument? If things really look great, we actually copy that out or we email it and hand it to their section. So their section uses that. So that's all in their notebook, and essentially they turn that into us. during an interview. And so we look through it just like a lot of us as band directors have done that. We've turned in a notebook, and during the interview, people look through it or look through it ahead of time. So not only do the drum majors do that, but right now they have their training that they're going through. So we work with them during the week, and we work on conducting patterns, clarity. We work on fundamentally just posture. How do we want you to look? What does a downbeat look like? We go through a score. So right now they're looking at the opener for next year, and they're conducting through the opener. So we sit and analyze the score and do score study. What's important? How can I, cue this or add this inflection? Those types of things. So I'd like it to where our drum majors don't just beat time, but they have a communication with the ensemble. So, how would an appropriate crescendo happen here to where you don't lose time? And so we discuss a lot of those things. We start the day with a sight read. So I give them 4 measures, very basic, nothing insane. But just, if it starts at 4/4 time and then changes to 3/4, how would you release here? How would you do your cutoff? So they do those types of things. And then just before that, like the very first thing we do is start with a scenario for the kids. Something that's very real to them. Questions on, your best friend Susie told you earlier today she's going to skip rehearsal. What do you do? And so we talk about those things, and sometimes that's come up before, where they've had to intervene and weigh the option of, do I do this as a friend? Do I do this as a drum major? Do I tell the band directors? What do I do? So we try to figure out all those little things that we as band directors have gone through in a rehearsal, and we try to ask the students how they would go through that. So that's kind of the drum major process now. And they would do all of that in their audition, which would be their patterns, a sight reading, conducting the show, and then they would have their interview with the portfolio. Everything's the same for the leadership kids. So even if you're a librarian, you're still going to learn how to place your foot this way, and you're still going to instruct people. So we try to give them all the same information so we can spread the detail of information out to as many students as possible. So maybe it kind of spikes their interest of, maybe I do want to audition for a different position next year. But essentially, I love detail. So to give them as much detail as I can, that I think that helps out the kids. So the only addition is that they would normally be marching box drill as well. So we watch them march. They still have their interview. They still have their portfolio. And that's, basically what we do for our leadership positions normally, not with this COVID-19 thing happening right now.
What adjustments are you going to make?
For right now
that you know of.
Yes. So right now what we're doing with our leadership, our drum majors, is we've incorporated Google Classroom a lot, as well as Zoom. So we're fortunate to use both of those platforms. So that online portfolio that all the leadership kids would have handed to us in a notebook, all of that moved to an online format. So we created a Google Doc for the teachers, and we sent the kids a link to that. And in turn, they had to email that to the teachers. They're still filling it out, and it goes back to us. The students have descriptions of what each item needs to be in their notebook. They create that, and they submit it through Google Classroom. So the only thing we would have to do for our leaders next week is we'll do a training with them as well, teach them how to teach. And then what they will do in their audition is they're actually going to teach us. So normally there would be a squad of kids that comes in, and there's 4 kids in their squad, and we say, okay, Billy, go ahead and teach us horns up and horns down, something like that. So we're going to give them the topic, and we'll meet with the kids through Zoom, and they're going to teach the band staff how to do that. So I'm sure that's going to be a lot of pressure for the kids, but I'm sure they'll do well. With our drum majors, we're, like Ed mentioned earlier, we're currently in our drum major audition process. So this is our second day on that. We meet at 8 a.m. and we go to 9:30. So I try to stay away from if they have Zoom meetings or class work with other teachers. So we try to get it early to where we're not really interfering with anything. So we meet with them for an hour and a half. What's tricky is that this is a new format to the veteran students that are auditioning again. because last year they had a different ideology on how to do everything. So as I'm coming in, I'm trying to implement what I would normally do on top of the fact that we have coronavirus happening. So all that is still happening just online. So the kids clock in at 8 o'clock. We start with the scenario. They're doing their sight reading. We work on their patterns. We go further into the show. And today we worked on, let me see, we did dynamics today. So how to, conduct one hand, and this guy's doing one thing. So that was very fun. So we went through that today. And we worked on releases today and how to release on one, and then, okay, but in the show, it has a release on 4. So how do we prep for that release? So we talked about that today. Yesterday was first time of figuring all this out. So we talked through the score, how to do some score study, as well as some of the patterns. And tomorrow we'll keep going with sight reading, a little bit more in depth with our score study and analysis on all that. And they know they have to memorize that part of the opener. So we're just trying to add and add and add as they go. So their audition is, they have 4 days straight for an hour and a half with us in the morning. And then Thursday evening this week is when we'll do the audition process, which that's going to be new for us, obviously, with doing this on Zoom. So the kids have a class code, so they jump into a meeting, and then they're just in the waiting room. They're assigned a time. So we have one student that's at 4 o'clock, another student that's at 4:20, another student. So once they're in the waiting room, we're just going to click them over, do their audition, and then they will find out that night who the drum majors are. And we just, okay, here you go, through an email and Instagram, so
right.
That's kind of our format right now.
So anybody that's listening, this is great information, like on how's the program dealing with audition process. So you go back, this is a great place in this so far on what you're doing and how you've managed it, and then already got it going in that process, as those that are trying to sort through this and figure out how they're going to do it and what's going to work for them. I'm sure a lot of those clues will help. So what's your leadership size like drum majors, numbers, ballparks, what kind of?
Yeah, we usually do, what we have had this year was 4 drum majors for our field performance. So we had 3 in the front, 1 in the back. We're not married to any exact number, but we're not going to go more than that. We're not going to have 1. So, it'll probably be 3 or 4. But if we were going to go less, we would probably split them, so you can split on either side of the field. But we usually range about 3 or 4 drum majors. For the other sections, it kind of floats between 2 or 3, depending on how many people are in that section. If it's a smaller section, or veterans, if they're, maybe it's a low reed thing versus a low reed and a saxophone thing. So it kind of changes from year to year, but in the end, we're going to end up being about, I would say, 32 to 35, right in that ballpark area with leadership overall.
So let's go on. Let's move forward. So now you have your leaders selected, and some of them are going to be here soon and in the next couple of weeks, sounds like. What do you do in terms of training your leaders to be ready for summer band and when you start your activities for the next year?
We will probably meet with all the leaders once everyone's been selected. We'll have a group meeting with that kind of the end of the year. Normally, what I do is I send out the students or the drum majors to a SASE drum major camp. They usually end up going to Texas State, but I know they're, who knows what's going to happen this summer. So I would assume that they'll probably have an online version of that, or it'll get moved to a later time period. We have, this last year, we had our leadership students with the SASE leadership team, and we've brought them in to do the leadership seminar. I feel really comfortable doing that, so we're going to move away from that. I've done a lot of leadership stuff in my past. We have a great staff that assists with it as well, so we're kind of doing our leadership training in-house, and then hoping that our drum majors can go out somewhere. If that doesn't work, it's fortunate, I was a high school drum major, our 2 assistants for high school drum majors. I was a conductor at Texas State, so we feel full confident training our students this year.
Very cool. Yeah, and in SASE camp, Jeremy's got his crew everywhere, and they do a great job.
That's great. Yeah, they're awesome.
All right. So now you get into summer band. It's time to start bringing everybody back for the next year.
Yeah.
Once you start that, what kind of roles do you ask of your leadership team and maybe even your band council, your council folks, and what do you ask of them once things start rolling in the fall?
We really try to keep them as involved as possible throughout the summer. This last summer, we had either a sectional or some meetup times where the winds would still get together and go through some music together. So we've kind of implemented that. We're moving into this summer would be a kind of an open band hall setting where we invite our lesson teachers in every Tuesday. We'll say, so they know that they can have lessons on that day, and that would be a day that we have woodwind sectionals work on music at this time. And when we have younger students, sometimes we'll actually send those section leaders out with a few of the kids that need a little bit of extra help, or working on hand positionings or those types of things. So we utilize them in the fact that, and that's kind of why I like multiple leaders, is that someone would remain with the group while someone else could do a pull out or help with that, and just building those relationships and starting that. So hopefully we can get that going. If we don't get to see our students this summer, God willing, we'll see them for summer band towards the end of July. And what we do essentially is we start every day, like the very first day is going to introduce those students to the overall band program. And so see them face to face. They actually, from the get-go, the first thing they do after their introduction is they take them on a campus tour. So we actually don't do band for a little bit, and they go around and they have to go meet the counselors. They have to go meet the principals. There go all the flutes together, and so they're showing them, okay, this is the 9000 building, and this is where this English teacher is going to be. So they kind of get the newer students acclimated to that, which is, we've only had positive reviews because kids start that first day of school and they're like, oh, great, I know exactly, where this class is. So they feel comfortable with that. Once we have those meetings, that's also any final paperwork for the staff of getting in physicals. We have physicals that we have to do. So, while they're doing that, we're checking on Susie's physical, how come we didn't get it turned in earlier? So we work on some of that while the leaders are doing their own thing. Then if we still need some time, we're issuing out those final instruments of that student who's coming in for the first time. They know that first day they're also going to have icebreakers. So they'll do their campus tour, then they'll come back and there's certain games that they'll play, a name game or, funny something to kind of break the ice with everyone and get comfortable. And then we'll finally go outside and this is the football field, and we do all that introductory stuff. So we're hoping that gets done earlier, but again, if we're here for the summer, just like everyone else, that'll be our first day, and we get to figure all of that out. So once we get in what will be our what was the secretary, who's not going to be our communications officer, we usually get a block going, and they will line everyone up, score order by last name. We kind of move section leaders around so they're in between to help students out. So essentially we get into that block. It morphs a lot. So we'll get into a blob sometimes, and we'll get into something to learn choreography, but that initial block setup is for our students to take attendance and make sure everyone's here. Staff starts making phone calls at that point. Where's Susie? What's going on? And then what ends up happening is we start a body workout. And so we start to do some dance movement. Eventually that turns into cross floors. And sometimes we have the leader step out and they just watch the rows go by and help us and try to find those students to kind of meet in general a little bit. Okay, I know I need to meet with this kid or this kid. So they do a lot. They will also, in the afternoon, they will help with some music stuff. So they'll do pull-outs. They'll even do some pass-offs for us on the easier things. So pass off the fight song to your section leader, pass off the school song, to your section leader. So they'll help a lot with that. That's also the time that our librarians are finalizing what usually should have been done by that time. All the copies and printouts and all that would normally happen right now in the month of April, May, so that we're ready for summer stuff. But again, we're home, so we'll be a little bit behind with it, but the librarians will be doing their part. So everyone kind of has their role, and we're all taking care of what needs to happen. But the section leaders get used for music as well as visual stuff. And once the season gets going, they continue that. And that's kind of why we're adding that, the brass captain and woodwind captain part, because there's times this year where we've had to just do field time, because I know I'm up on the tower, but I see that role of more like a timekeeper, keeping us on track versus like getting in all those details. So to me, all the details come from the staff and the students that are on the field. So if we have to work on a color guard pass through with just the mellophones and trumpets, and we don't have to work on that from an entire ensemble, then the brass captain can work on some music portions, and we just break off into subsectionals for a little bit. We all come back at a certain time, and then we rep things as a group. So there's a lot of pullouts that happen consistently with the ensemble. So that kind of takes them through the entire year. We're at a show, we get off the bus, they're in charge of their section, make sure everyone has everything. They kind of get in their little groups, their powwows. We get together, we go into warm-ups. So they get utilized quite a lot in the fall.
That's great, and how you utilize them and the format and the detail that you have on that. Any other special or extra duties that some of your leaders maybe ask around the facilities besides the normal help out, teach, take care of your sections?
Yes, we do a lot with our council to reach out either to other programs or life events that happen. We've in the past, I've had students just make a big card and send it to the bus barn thanking our bus drivers, or a life event happens where a student in our band family needs support, and we get cards or flowers or donations or something like that to get going. Our vice president, our communications officer, they usually get together and kind of handle a lot of those things, or we sit down and we say, okay, in the month of November, we want to do something. We had Bandsgiving this year, so we set out some tables. Everyone did a potluck. We had a great time. It was just for the kids, and we just hung out there. And then, for every holiday, we try to have something. In summer band, they organize Band Olympics or a game, or something that the kids can play. So at the end of each week, there's like a theme something. I think this year we had like Disney Day, and we had the whole Prince Charming and Snow White was out there, and the Seven Dwarfs. It was great. They kind of are in charge of those events. They also communicate a lot with the school or with the community. We had a clothing drive this year that the students put on. So there's types of things that I really want to make sure that the kids know that, we're trying to be better human beings for the world just through music. So, now when we're doing at home and in this whole COVID-19 thing, I'm gonna donate blood this week, because I know that giving back, to my community can be something. So hopefully they learn those types of things through the organization. But other than that, the kids will come up with like a tutoring schedule. They help each other out for almost those non-band things. We try to make sure that the kids are well-rounded. And then, this year we're looking to start a spring leadership team. So where the students are not necessarily like the section leader, who's probably like the kid in the top band. They don't get to see, their trumpet section anymore. That's in our concert band. So kind of opening that up to where we have interview auditions for those roles. So there's going to be a trumpet section leader in the top band, the second band, and the third band. And then we'll have librarians for each band, because we know there's sometimes where, oh, I lost my part, and so, and you don't have time as a director to do that. Your other staff members probably in a pullout or something. And so you have to get the librarian to help out. So we're trying to fill in some of those voids and what we think is going to kind of build students to want to take on a bigger leadership role. Because sometimes, the trumpet player who's going to be the section leader in the concert band, they might just be a sophomore, or or junior, or maybe not your strongest leadership candidate, but that kind of empowers them and trains them up for the future. So hopefully we get a year-round leadership team.
Yeah, I love that stuff. That's just good. And how you're planning, looking to keep them going and adding on. So that seems like a new thing I keep hearing about, is people finding ways, and how do we do this in the spring for the kids too?
Right.
And then your extension outside of the classroom, all that stuff is great for kids these days, and probably carries over into what we're dealing with right now. So
yeah, I hope so.
You're right. So obviously we're in some interesting times. It kind of goes through your leadership program. Anything else on your leaders or leadership on that program?
I think in general, I mean, these are positions that kids are excited to try. And when you think about it, it's probably the first time they're going through an interview process. So if the mindset is actually about, a life skill, then, that's why I encourage people to actually do those portfolios or a notebook or something, because sometimes in your career, your job that you have to bring an example of something that essentially you're trying to win that position. So you're trying to earn that job. So somehow to show them interview skills, how to dress for an interview, how to speak. You can't say like all the time, and those types of things. And we try to coach them up for that. So I think the most encouraging info that I have would be to try to see it from a life perspective. How are you training students to go through life, interview for a job, have them feel some pressure. Like right now, I'm doing lessons with our drum majors, and they're required to have a lesson with a staff member. And they're sitting there like, there's a lot, I'm trying to get all this worked out. And I said, good, because you should feel some pressure, because when, we're at Bands of America and people are watching you, thousands of people, and it's streaming on marching, you better feel some pressure and know how to get through that. And something we're also trying to teach the kids is not everyone's going to get the job. So when it's like, how do you go through the feeling of, I really worked hard on this and I didn't get what I wanted. So we try to teach the kids and coach the kids on how do you go through those feelings. So we had to start our week, we met actually a Zoom meeting with the drum major candidates and their parents. And we talked about, know that your child, this is the process. We laid it out and said, not all of them are going to make it. So when they don't, they need to, first off, when they hear that info, not just throw their hat and walk out of the room, but, we're all going to be on a Zoom meeting together. So say, congratulations, great job. And then when you turn off the screen, it's okay to be upset, to cry, to have those emotions, and how to deal with that. And then how to move on from that. Are you going to get on Instagram and just blast that kid, or say, the band director's made the wrong choice? How are you going to get through that? So we talk about that as a group. And then for those that do get the position, it's a servant leader position. It's a humble position that we should have. So when they get that job, they're not going to be like, oh man, I told you, and tell the other kid to their face how they feel. So take that information, be humbled, say thank you, I appreciate it. And then when you click that screen off this weekend, how do you react past that? How are you going to gloat about it, or are you going to be satisfied and thankful and okay, let's hit the ground running from here? So we go through that, and just how to emotionally get through those things, so that in the long term, when 10, 15, 20 years from now, the kids are successful because of their first step that they did with band.
Yeah, wonderful insight. Wonderful insight. Let's talk about this closure school stuff. You're doing stuff online. Found any cool tricks that you'd like to share? It's not really leadership. Band director.
It's a lot. Like, I feel like everyone's learning from, everyone else that's posting things. So at first, when that happened, and for us, it's been a month now, because we went on spring break and then everything closed right after that. So we've been out for a month. And so at first it was just mind blowing. Like, what? This has never happened ever. Like, no one I know can say, oh, the last time COVID happened. So as we're figuring this out, it's been kind of tricky. I had personally not used Google Classroom before. I feel really good about it now. So, but we're doing a lot of different assignments. So we've utilized Smart Music. We've utilized Google Classroom and Zoom. Those are our three main platforms. So what we do as a staff right now, we have a playing assignment, and that can be where the student uploads a video to Google Classroom, or it could be where they are using something that we found on Smart Music. So when we first started, we still had UIL a month ago. And so they were continuing their online Smart Music assignments for their UIL music. Obviously, UIL was postponed and canceled. So what we ended up doing is still utilizing smart music, but kind of taking it from finding different method books that are on there, or certain snippets of music, and that they have to transcribe or transpose. And so each week they get a playing assignment, something where they're playing, submitting a recording or a video. They have to do there are other things that they have to do, some sort of music appreciation, something, So we send them a video, or this week we're studying Percy Grainger. We did not play any of his music this year, so here's a composer. I want you to write a paragraph on what you thought about this tune, or select your favorite video, upload it, and tell me why you selected that from this composer. So we try to do something that way. We have our Color Guard Google Classrooms up there. They're submitting videos or learning choreography and then sending that to us, coming up with their own choreography. Our jazz group is going as well. So same thing, there's a music appreciation assignment, there's a playing assignment. And then we have instrumental ensembles in our class period, which is, if the kids can fit it in, we try to have like a woodwind instrumental ensemble, just continuing studies and selected, like right now, scales is what they're working on. So going further into their harmonic, melodic scales, things that normally we wouldn't see. So that's, we're trying. So we're getting them a music assignment, we're getting a music appreciation assignment. And then, we also have sectionals. So earlier today, I had a woodwind sectional, and we did not work any UIL music. Essentially, we're taking Irish tune from Grainger, and they're learning how to transpose that, or they're learning how to just transcribe it. So we're working their ear, their oral skills, looking at music theory. And so as long as they're still playing and coming from a musicianship standpoint, we're just trying to keep them going as best we can.
Great. Good help. Any shout outs you want to give?
Ooh, shout outs. I definitely want to say hi to my kids. I haven't seen them in a month, so a little dub C for those kids. So hopefully they're doing great. I mean, from what I've seen, shout outs to our band staff. I get to work with Joseph Espinosa. He's an outstanding clarinetist. He's our associate director. Colton Bean is our percussion instructor. He's also the conductor for our concert band. And then Kim Boer, she's outstanding color guard instructor, and she helps with our design of our show, our winter guard. So just a big shout out to those guys, and all the directors trying to keep their head above water right now.
Great. And any last tips for leadership for someone's program out there?
I say, kind of what we talked about earlier is get out there and watch these things, ask people and see what else is going on and out there, and never be okay with just doing the same old. If you see that someone else is doing something that you're like, man, that could kind of apply to us, try it, and try it more than once, because probably the first time it's not going to go the way you want, but keep tweaking things. I've changed our process that I've used, each year. It's been tweaked in some form or fashion, always just trying to get better. So, make good choices, think of others. So that's really about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you. You got great information, great stuff for people to think about, and possible ways to improve their programs. Also, how you're setting things up there at Winston Churchill. So, on behalf of the Hey Band Network, thank you very much for joining me today. Hope we'll get this out to your students for their little shout out at Winston Churchill. I know they're not on social media or Facebook social media. Maybe get the word out to them.
Sure.
It's up on YouTube, on the Hey Band Network YouTube link. Anybody's welcome to subscribe for that. So thank you.
Awesome.
Wish you and your staff and your students the best in the rest of this year and what's left, and going through the process. And then have a wonderful next school year also.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chad.
Thank you.